After catching my boyfriend cheating, I left without telling him I was pregnant. 7 years later, he's back and fighting for full custody of the son he never knew about. I'm 28 now, and I have a 7-year-old son named Joel. His father is my ex-boyfriend, Wesley, also 28. But here's the thing, I never told him I was pregnant. Wesley and I started dating back in college, and after we graduated, we got an apartment together. Things were serious between us, or at least, I thought they were. Looking back now, I'm not so sure about him. At one point, I brought up the idea of marriage. It wasn't like I was rushing into it, I just wanted to know if he saw that in our future. Less than a month later, I discovered that he'd been texting his ex. And not just any texts, he was complaining to her about me, saying I'd become clingy and that he needed a break. It didn't stop there. They'd even planned a romantic getaway together. I wouldn't have known any of this if his ex hadn't replied to one of his messages late at night. The notification popped up on his phone while he was asleep. He'd changed his password, but I already knew what it was. I unlocked his phone and found weeks of messages, him venting about me and the two of them flirting like it was nobody's business. I was devastated. I cried myself to sleep that night because, at the time, I was completely in love with him. After almost 3 years together, I thought marriage was the natural next step. I didn't expect to walk down the aisle right away, but I wanted to know we were on the same page. Turns out, we weren't even in the same book. But after that one night of crying, I decided to keep it together. I acted like everything was fine so he wouldn't have a clue that I knew about his cheating. I learned he was heading off on that trip with his ex in a few days. So I made a plan. I'd stay with him until he left, and while he was off enjoying his little getaway, I'd pack up, leave, and cut ties for good. And that's exactly what I did. Those few days were brutal, staying with a man who clearly had no respect or love for me. But I didn't want to confront him. I knew leaving without a word would hurt him more than any argument ever could. He told me he was going on a business trip, which was laughable since neither of our jobs required travel. But I didn't ask questions. I just wished him well, pretending to believe his excuse. As soon as he left, I packed up everything in one day, moved out, and went back to my parents' place. I had a friend who lived in another state, so I reached out to her, explained the whole mess, and bought a one-way ticket to her city. My job let me work remotely for the rest of my notice period, which gave me time to find a new position. Within a few weeks, I'd landed a job, got my own apartment, and started fresh. My friend was a godsend, helping me every step of the way. To make sure Wesley couldn't contact me, I changed my phone number, blocked him everywhere, and made it clear to my friends and family that they shouldn't pass along any information about me. I even had friends scattered across different states, so if he tried to track me down, he'd hit a dead end. Not that I thought he'd care enough to try, but I wanted to be absolutely sure. I thought I'd closed that chapter of my life for good. But then, a few weeks after settling into my new place, I realized I'd missed a period. A pregnancy test confirmed it, I was pregnant. Strangely enough, it felt like a blessing. After everything that had happened, that positive test was the first good thing in a long time. I decided to keep the baby, and it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. I firmly believe my son brought me luck because, from that point on, my life began to turn around. I loved my new job, made some great friends who helped me adjust to the city, and felt genuinely happy for the first time in ages. A few friends back home mentioned that Wesley was frantically trying to find me. They even asked if I wanted to tell him about the pregnancy, but I was firm he didn't deserve closure, let alone a role in my child's life. I knew if he found out, he'd try to weasel his way in, and I wasn't about to let that happen. Despite some people disagreeing with my decision, I stuck to it. My friends and family respected my wishes and didn't say a word to Wesley. 7 years later, my son is in 2nd grade, I'm in a great position at work, and I've been in a relationship with my boyfriend, Elias, for a year now. He's a banker and an amazing guy, so much better than my slimy ex. Everything was going smoothly until 3 days ago. Out of nowhere, Wesley showed up at my door with a legal notice. He's demanding full custody of my son. Seeing him standing there was like being hit by a freight train. Before I could even process the shock, he shoved the papers at me. And just like that, my carefully built world started to crack. This was the kind of nightmare I wouldn't wish on anyone, but there it was, happening to me. Wesley stood there, telling me I had two choices: I could prepare for a court battle or be a decent human being for once and give him custody of Joel so our son could supposedly have a better life. Then he left, just like that, leaving me standing in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity. Thankfully, Joel was at school when Wesley showed up, so he didn't see his father or ask any uncomfortable questions I wasn't ready to answer. It's been 3 days since that encounter, and I haven't told a soul about it, not my friends, not anyone. Honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what to do next. I know full well that my decision all those years ago wasn't the most ethical one. But it's been 7 years. Joel has only ever known me as his parent, and I seriously doubt any court would just strip me of custody now. Still, I can't help but feel this nagging fear deep down. The only person I've told so far is Elias, my boyfriend. That conversation was gut-wrenching because it meant I had to come clean about everything. Up until now, Elias thought Joel's father had chosen not to be part of his life. That's what I'd told him. But now I had to admit the truth, that I never gave Wesley the chance to decide. I'd left as soon as I found out about his cheating and never looked back, even after learning I was pregnant. I knew Wesley had been searching for me, but I made sure he couldn't find me. Elias didn't take it lightly. He was understandably upset that I hadn't been honest with him before, but he also understood how painful it was for me to revisit that chapter of my life. He reassured me that he got why I wasn't ready to share it earlier. Still, he didn't sugarcoat his feelings about what I'd done to Wesley. Elias told me it was cruel to purposely keep Wesley in the dark about his own child, even if he'd cheated on me. He said my actions were wrong, no matter how badly Wesley had treated me. Depriving him of the chance to be a father was, in Elias's eyes, just as unfair as Wesley cheating on me. And if someone hadn't tipped Wesley off, he never would have known about Joel at all. Now I'm stuck in this whirlwind of confusion, questioning whether I was right or wrong. I know what I did was morally gray at best, but so was Wesley's cheating. He wasn't fair to me, and maybe I wasn't fair to him either. In my mind, we're even. But Elias doesn't see it that way. He thinks I owe Wesley an apology and that the best-case scenario now is joint custody. I'm not so sure. From my perspective, Wesley has no legal rights to Joel. He's been absent, granted, not by choice, but he hasn't been part of our lives. I had my reasons for keeping him out of the picture, and they felt justified at the time. Now everything just feels like a mess, and that's why I turned to Reddit for a fresh perspective. So, am I the bad guy for not telling Wesley I was pregnant and leaving without a word after finding out he cheated? Update 1: It's been a week since Wesley showed up, and a lot has come to light. This might get lengthy, but I need to explain everything. First and foremost, I'm not giving up custody of my son. Not even partial custody. Wesley doesn't deserve it. I've read through the divided opinions in the comments, and I've decided to focus on the ones that validate my actions, given Wesley's betrayal. He cheated on me not just with anyone, but with his ex. To make matters worse, his relationship with her wasn't even that significant. They'd only dated for a couple of months before breaking it off because he wanted something casual. 4 months later, he started dating me. And yet, 3 years into our relationship, he threw it all away for a fling that didn't even last half a year. What hurt the most wasn't just the cheating. It was the lies. He'd painted me as clingy, needy, and emotionally dependent, all untrue. He only said those things to gain his ex's sympathy and lure her back into his life. All I'd done was ask a simple question about marriage, hoping to understand if we were aligned in the long term. After 3 years together, I thought it was a fair conversation to have. But instead of being honest, he spiraled and betrayed me. If he couldn't commit to me after 3 years, how could I expect him to commit to a child? That's why I made the decision I did. I wasn't legally obligated to tell him about the pregnancy, and while some may call it unethical, I stand by my choice. It was the right move for my happiness and stability. If Wesley had been a decent partner, none of this would have happened. We might still be together, raising our son as a family. But he made his choices, and those choices have consequences. He lost me and, by extension, lost the chance to be in Joel's life. I refuse to feel guilty about that. I've also discovered who betrayed me by giving Wesley my information. It was my mother. That revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. When I told her about Wesley showing up, she confessed without me even asking. I hadn't suspected her at all. 2 days ago, I called her for advice and to catch up since we hadn't talked in a while. She'd seemed distant lately, and now I know why. She admitted she'd contacted Wesley after hearing from a friend that he'd been promoted to vice president at his company. This friend of hers knew Wesley's mother, and apparently, Wesley had been reaching out to my mom for years, trying to find me. She'd kept quiet until now. This time, my mom crossed a line I never thought she would. Without even consulting me, she reached out to Wesley and told him everything. Her reasoning? She thought I couldn't handle the cost of raising Joel on my own forever and that Joel needed his father in the picture now that he's getting older. She didn't ask me because she knew how much I'd hate the idea, so she went ahead and did what she thought was right. I can't wrap my head around it. My own mother, someone who knew how broken I was after Wesley cheated on me, did this behind my back. She saw how long it took me to pick myself up, and yet she decided to make this decision without so much as a conversation with me. When I told her Wesley was now demanding full custody, she went silent. She had no defense. All she kept saying was that she thought she was doing what was best for me and that I'd thank her later. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. No doubt, Wesley's in a better financial position than me, that's undeniable. After my heated phone call with my mom, I did some digging. Turns out Wesley is now married to his ex, the same one he cheated on me with. So, I guess he's capable of commitment, just not with me. He's living in a nice house, has a solid career, and seems to be doing really well for himself. Good for him. But you know what? I'm doing fine, too. I've built a nice life for myself and my son. I don't need Wesley's help now, just as I didn't need it back then. I rejected him once, and I've gone 7 years without him in my life. I still don't understand what possessed my mom to interfere like this, but I know one thing for sure: I'm done with her. Her actions were the ultimate betrayal. She assumed I'd appreciate the help and didn't even think about the fallout of her decision. I'm lucky Wesley's just a self-centered jerk and not someone dangerous, because her choice could have cost me a whole lot more than just emotional turmoil. I blocked her on everything, and I don't plan on unblocking her anytime soon, maybe not ever. What she did was beyond disrespectful, and I can't see myself forgiving her. As for the custody case, I genuinely don't think Wesley has a strong chance of winning. It's been 7 years. Joel's doing perfectly fine without him. At most, he might get visitation rights or partial custody if he hires a great lawyer. But full custody? I don't see it happening. I've never asked Wesley for child support, and there's nothing he can hold over me. I've even got old photos of the texts he exchanged with his ex, the ones I found when I first discovered he was cheating. I never used them before, but they might come in handy now. I've been consulting with a lawyer, and will be responding to the custody petition soon. Elias, my boyfriend, hasn't been particularly supportive through all of this. He knows it's my decision to make, but something about his reaction has been unsettling. He's been distant and weird, almost like he disapproves of how I'm handling things. If I'm being honest, I'm starting to rethink our relationship. Our values don't seem to align, and the way he's been acting lately is making me question whether this is the kind of partner I want in my life. Update 2. Wesley and I are scheduled to meet with a court-appointed mediator in 2 days. To say I'm stressed would be an understatement. I've had to talk to Joel about all of this, and it's been tough. Up until now, he thought his father was just someone I left behind. I've never told him the real reason Wesley isn't in his life. When Joel would ask, I'd just say his dad didn't know about him but would have loved him if he had. That answer satisfied him, and he didn't push for more details. I planned to tell Joel the full story when he turned 16, when he was old enough to decide for himself whether he wanted Wesley in his life. But now, I have to prepare him for this far sooner than I ever wanted to. If this goes to court, there's a chance Joel could be dragged into it. For now, he only knows that his dad is back and wants to spend time with him. I can't exactly explain the concept of custody to a 7-year-old, so I kept it simple. I expect Wesley will get supervised visits for a while, and I'll just have to deal with it for the sake of the case. I can't lie, I'm scared. I'm terrified Joel might grow fond of Wesley, and I might lose the one person who means the world to me. It's selfish, I know, but I've worked so hard to create this life for us. Wesley can't just swoop in and take it all away. Meanwhile, my mom has been blowing up my phone, trying to reach me. She's even been using my dad's number to get through since she knows I won't block him. My dad's been amazing through all this, completely supportive and understanding. He's furious with my mom and has been fighting with her non-stop. Apparently, he's so fed up that he's considering moving in with his brother for a while. He mentioned it during our last call, saying he needed a break from her. I think he was hinting at something more permanent, like leaving her altogether. I don't even know how to process that. They've been married for over 30 years, and now it feels like everything is unraveling. Right now, I can't shake this heavy feeling of guilt, even though I know I don't have a real reason to feel that way. It's just that everything feels so toxic lately. My parents are fighting nonstop, Elias and I are drifting further apart, and Wesley has come back into my life with a lawyer, trying to take my son away from me. It's like every important relationship in my life is in shambles, and it's all hitting me at once. Update 3. It's been about a week and a half since my last update, and today, we finally had the talk. Honestly, it had been coming for a while. He'd been acting strange and distant ever since I told him I wasn't going to apologize to Wesley or give him custody. Elias didn't take that well. I did apologize to him for not telling him the full truth about Wesley before. I never mentioned that I'd deliberately hidden my pregnancy and Joel from Wesley because of the cheating. That was on me. But aside from that, I don't feel like I owed Elias any other apologies. If our breakup had been about me lying to him, I could have understood. But instead, Elias said he couldn't be with a woman who has no morals. In his mind, I was wrong for not giving my cheating ex a chance to be a father after everything he'd done to me. What started as a conversation quickly escalated into a nasty fight. He called me manipulative and stormed out after dropping a few choice words. It wasn't pretty, but at least it's over now. I don't have to deal with him anymore, and honestly, that's a relief. On the custody front, things are going surprisingly well, for me, at least. Wesley and I have had 2 meetings with the mediator so far, and my reasons for not wanting him around when Joel was born were deemed valid. Between the cheating, the lies, and the things he said about me back then, it's clear why I made the choices I did. Because of this, what I did in the past can't be used against me. As of now, we've agreed Wesley can have supervised visitation a couple of times a month, but it'll all be on my terms. I'm Joel's primary parent and always have been, so I'm not budging on that. The process isn't finalized yet, and Wesley could still decide to take this to court. But honestly, I don't think he will. After our first meeting, when I brought up the cheating, he came up to me afterward to apologize. He admitted that he'd been young and stupid back then. He said the idea of marriage had freaked him out, which is why he acted the way he did. He seemed genuinely sorry, and while I appreciated the apology, it doesn't change what happened. Still, I forgave him. At this point, it's all water under the bridge. What matters to me most now is Joel's happiness. I don't want him to grow up resenting me for not giving him the chance to know his father when I had the opportunity to make it happen. Wesley also told me that he and his wife don't have kids of their own. When my mom told him about Joel, he was angry at first, but after seeing me and realizing how I've raised Joel on my own, his perspective shifted. He doesn't want to take Joel away from me, he made that clear. We've agreed to put our differences aside and do what's best for Joel. By the next meeting, I'm hoping we can finalize everything. I'm ready to leave the past behind and move forward. Update 4. Some good news, Wesley and I have worked out an arrangement. He and his wife will fly out to visit Joel a couple of times a month so they can start building a relationship with him. Once Joel is older, we'll revisit the custody arrangements and decide what's best then. Since we'll be co-parenting from now on, I decided to unblock Wesley and his wife. They've been incredibly thankful and have even sent me thank you cards and small gifts. We're not friends, but I realize we need a good working relationship for this to succeed. It'll be tricky since we live in different cities, but maybe by the time we revisit custody, I'll have moved back home. I came here to escape my past, but now I feel like I don't have anything to run from anymore. It might sound dramatic, but it's true, I'm finally ready to go back. As for my parents, no surprise there, they're getting divorced. Honestly, good for my dad. My mom has always been a bit of a control freak, and I know this isn't the first time it's caused issues in their marriage. But this time, she crossed a line, and there's no coming back from that. I hope this means my life is finally headed for some peace and quiet. My conscience is clear, and the past is exactly where it belongs, behind me.